Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea. I'm your host as always, Elwood Jones, and joining me of course is my co-host, Miss Kim and Elwood.
Hello.
And if you haven't guessed already by the title of tonight's episode, it's Shark Week once again here on Movies and Tea, where we once again dive into the depths to check out the wonderful world of shark movies. Tonight looking at Great White from 2021, a film which was released with much fanfare as a Shudder exclusive, at least outside the UK it was, and then disappeared just as quickly. But we are going to find out tonight whether this Australian shark movie is on the same level as Bait, or whether it's just pure chum. Prior to this, had you seen this one before, or is this a first time watch?
I have seen this one before, and in my mind, it was better than the second watch. So this rewatch was rather sad because, I don't know, I think, it wasn't great the first time. The pacing was a lot of issues to it, and
Yep.
It felt a lot like it wanted to be Reef, but it didn't really have that, Reef was, it still had its pacing issues also. And it's like a slow burn shark movie. And this one is trying to be like that as well. Keeping the shark more in the shadows. But this one has I think when you take a really close look at it, there's a lot of issues with it, whether you talk about the effects or you talk about how the shark appears, or even the very wonderful addition of a roaring shark. Everything kind of feels like, you have character issues, you have a lot of things that don't really mesh together well, and there's characters that are just a nuisance from start to end, and you just kind of it's a shark movie that doesn't, to me, it doesn't really deliver, especially in the second time. I think I chopped my Letterboxd ranking, like my rating in half from the first time. So right now it's ranked pretty low, which is very rare because I don't usually rank things too low, but things happen.
The film itself is from the executive producer of 47 Meters Down. The two main producers here is Jack Christensen, who previously did The Reef Stalked and Blackwater Abyss. Those are the two sort of standouts. It's also produced by Christopher Figg, who was the executive producer for Hellraiser 1, 2, and 3, as well as No Clerks 4, 3, 2, 1, and Coriolis with Rolf Fiennes. He was also the executive producer of We Need to Talk About Kevin, and now he's attached to this movie. The film itself is set in Australia, and it follows a pair of seaplane operators named Kaz and her boyfriend Charlie. Charlie is suffering from a bit of PTSD, as he was a marine biologist who survived a shark attack while diving. Now they operate seaplane tours, and they've just recently been hired by this wealthy businessman and his wife Michelle, and along with cook Benny, to take them out to the picturesque Hell's Reef, where they find a corpse that has been washed up, and suspecting a shark attack, they begin to investigate, only to soon find themselves targeted by a pair of great white sharks, which soon puts the group floating in the ocean in a lifeboat, as they try to make it to shore before the boat sinks or the sharks get them. I have real flashbacks to the Reef when I'm watching this, which is not a good thing, because the Reef wasn't good. So I have had high expectations. I mean, obviously it's an Australian shark movie, and you think obviously Australia has more familiarity with sharks, so you would think that they would be the place to produce a good shark movie, because I don't know what it is about shark movies, but they're even fallen into one or two categories of being either made for sci-fi fodder, which is a lot of bad CGI and a lot of really bad plots, or just really sort of lazy and boring shark movies. And this sort of falls into that latter category, really, where we're basically got a group of people stuck on a yacht, none of who are particularly interesting, and they're in a location that's not particularly interesting at all either. While being pursued by this pair of sharks. And I think it only really gets interesting really towards the finale for myself. But what did you think of this group, Kim?
Oh, this group. What can I say? I didn't really have a big issue. I think everybody was pretty, average in general, but I think the one that really annoys me the most is the character of Joji, which is the husband of the couple that commissions them to go out to this, what is it called? Hell's Reef or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that character is a real pain in the ass. Like, he has this, like, weird jealous thing that's going on for him, and somehow it just ends up escalating to really ridiculous proportions.
It is. It doesn't make the slightest bit of sense, really, because he's got this whole thing where Benny the cook, who just looks at his wife, and that's apparently all it takes to set him off and have like this grudge that lasts the whole film. And it just really comes out of nowhere, which doesn't help when you've got like an irritating character who basically thinks because he's wealthy that everything that he wants to happen is going to happen. And then when you've got this really bizarre subplot where he's just like, he thinks that Benny's trying to hit on his wife, when all Benny does is just happen to look in her general direction. It just really becomes kind of irritating, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are some, like, really weird type of interactions. Like, he's, like, smiling or something, and he thinks way too much of it. But I think in general, like, the character of Benny is just one, which is, like, he's trying to reassure them, that they're not going to die.
Yeah.
That's because they're part of, he's hired by this group. Yeah, maybe he thinks the girl is, pretty, and, he's taking a second look. I don't know. But in the realm of the situation, it doesn't, when you have a character like this, it kind of like breaks you from, if you're about to die, will you be jealous about someone like oogling your wife? Like, I don't know. I mean, it seems like the matter at hand is a little bit more important of, just trying to focus on paddling and getting out of there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it just doesn't make sense, and his character is very frustrating because he can't break out of it, and like he's like and then he's scared to die at the beginning, like the plane is sinking, and then he's just hanging on. He's like, just get here, you get here or you don't, like it's up to you type of thing.
Yeah. It's he sort of has that one character trait that's sort of all he sort of hangs on to, and the fact that whenever the film sort of like has no idea of what to do next, it just basically involves those two arguing with each other. And it's also interesting when they introduce his wife Michelle, that they just blatantly rip off the shot of Rose from Titanic when she's introduced. And she looks at the hat, and it's sort of like, you just blatantly stole a shot from Titanic to put into your film. And it's not even like the first time they do it. They steal like for about 4 or 5 different shots that I noticed of this film. There's also a scene where the shark attacks the pontoon of the seaplane, which is just a pure rip-off of Jaws 2. That one was a little harder to ignore as well, but the sharks themselves, they've got no justification for like attacking people. It's just sort of like, oh, they're sharks, they must just constantly want to attack people. Like when we look at like the Shallows, for example.
Yeah.
They made it was far-fetched, but it kind of made sense. It's sort of like she'd gone into this shark's feeding area. And it kind of made sense. They set out the rules of it, and you sort of bought into the logic of it. But these sharks just attack the plane because it's there, basically.
Yeah,
There's no rhyme, no reason to it.
Basically, their argument behind it is that they made this like whole talk about how like some sharks appear out of season because of environmental change, which is basically like, you can use that excuse for every shark movie if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Because, they're forced out of their normal habits. They're forced out of their seasonal routine. They're, where they're supposed to be at this time of year. And, this happens to be out of the blue. And maybe that's because of that they now have to, hunt down these people or whatever.
It's not the most illogical reason for a shark being there, especially when you like compare it to like Jaws of Revenge, where the shark goes to Barbados on a mission of revenge. So yeah, I mean that would be a logical plot, but the film chooses not to be logical, even though it has a pretty logical setup.
You know, the main thing with it is that as I watch this a second time, I think I notice it more is that this time, you know, because I'm watching it for the podcast, I'm a little bit more focused. I try to spend more time on like noticing the little things. And I realize that this movie is a lot of overhead shots. So many overhead shots. You could have cut like a bunch of them and it would have cut like, I don't know, the movie by 10 minutes or something, you know? It was a lot. And it was like, you know, it wasn't like, you know, the Meg where we had that overhead shot so that we could see, you know, the shadow of the Meg in the water, you know. This one, it was just to see how the emptiness they were in. It was like, I know they're empty, you know, I know they're in the middle of the ocean and how that works. You know. And it's just a lot of these things that I think add up where you kind of feel like the movie is padded out in a way that it doesn't need to be that way.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think the potential of Great White was there in the sense that, you know, you have these people, they're on this little lifeboat, and while the people aren't particularly interesting, everybody comes into play in their part, in their own way, except for, you know, Joji, which is the dude we were talking about before, and they even have this interesting plot of like, oh, now they have to, you know, paddle to a certain thing, which gives them that cautious slow burn of why they need to do this. And you know, everybody watches shark movies, you know, you don't want to splash a lot, you want to do certain things, you know, so that you don't attract the shark and you can, you know, whatever, get there in a certain amount of time or whatever. But I think that, you know, when you have, but the deal in this one was that the pacing was so off because you had so many of these, like, you know, you're in that moment and then in between cutting, you would be like, oh, an overhead shot and then an underwater shot. And then we're going to go see the shark swimming in, you know, from a distance. Whoosh, you know? And then you'd be like, and then it was so ridiculous. Like, I was just sitting here and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I watching this again? If I watched it the first time and never rewatched it, it would have been a 3 stars because it was kind of average the first time. It was acceptable for maybe because I watched a bad movie before. So I thought, you know, this was decent. And then it was like, you watch the second time and it was like, cut half of that. I don't want to do this ever again.
Yeah, it really says a lot when the best shot of the movie is a flashback that they use not once but about 7 times. And this is this scene of Charlie being attacked underwater by this shark, and it's actually pretty decent CGI, and it seems to be where all the budget went because the CGI doesn't ever look as good as it does in this sequence. And whenever they get, this is the problem with the director, it's so lazy. It's like whenever it needs to, the shark appears, he has a flashback to this bloody shark attack. There's no overcoming it. I mean, spoiler alert, he doesn't even make it to the end. It all falls to his girlfriend to like get the job done at the end of the day.
No, but it's just, you know, like the end is, you know, I agree with you in the sense that I don't know where you mean the end is the best, but is it just that movie ending? But I mean, for me, I thought the last sequence was really good when you had that whole like battling the sharks in the sunken ship.
Yeah.
I thought that part was like a real highlight of the movie. And even the second time, I thought that was still a highlight but there are still a lot of illogical points in that scene when you watch it again, and a lot of it has to be that, oh, you know, they have the strategy and it worked the first time, you know, the flares and then the stabbing in the brain, and, you know, it's a teamwork, it works. The first one worked out fine, you know, and then all of a sudden for the second shark, they were like, you know what, let's switch it up. and then that's how he doesn't make it to the end. And, you know, like it's just so stupid because if they kept their plan, maybe they would have made it. Although if they did, then, you know, you wouldn't have the 2 girls being able to, you know, give Michelle a role of, you know, coming in and helping and coming back to help, right?
Michelle's role, her role is just basically have some underwater lesbian snogging. which they write off as CPR. And I can say that, when like you watch CPR on TV, especially if you've done CPR training, and how fake it looks, this is going to be the most bullshit mouth to mouth. It's just basically some lesbianism written off as CPR, and it is just this is her whole role, is just to basically appear out of nowhere, revive Katrina Ballard's character Kaz, who at this point is supposedly passed out from lack of oxygen, but this is all it takes to revive her, and her to be like fully like, I'm back in the game, I know what I need to do. Throwing the fact that the sharks roar, and I was just like, oh jeez. We should just rename this segment "Sharks Don't Roar." How many times have we seen sharks roar now? It's like,
and like, I mean, we're talking about the CGI, and I think there's two shots of the shark, which barring the underwater sequences that they use, that's really bad. And one of them is, I think, when it attacks the plane, the seaplane.
Yeah.
That one is so bad. And then the other one is when it kills Joji. When it hops out of the water, does that, sideway dive.
Oh, yeah.
And then it grabs him and then goes underwater. And I thought that, like, those two moments were so bad. Like, I mean, honestly, that scene, I think, the first time around was much more acceptable because I wanted this character to be gone. He was so horrible. He killed the cook character. I forgot the cook's name. Billy? I don't know. What's his name? Charlie?
Betty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Betty apparently gets a tap with an oar, and that's all it takes to break his arm. We should also point out they had this little girly slap, and he and Joji hits him with an oar, and he falls overboard, and he comes up and he's like, "Oh, I broke my arm! I can't swim." And you just got the lightest tap from an oar. And that's all it took for you. It's like, if you got like the most brittle bones in the world. But then again, Benny annoyed me as well because you got a guy, he's here, supposed to be helping his friends, he's there as the cook, and his whole thing seems to be, as soon as Joji takes a dislike to him, his whole mission seems to be from that point on to try to see how much he can piss Joji off at every moment. It's sort of like he's antagonizing and saying like, oh, and they're like saying, oh, we may see a whale, and then he pipes up, oh, a shark. And it's like, why are you adding to this situation? Why are you trying to antagonize the people paying for your friend's business here? And I love as well the fact he's going to cook things, but he's got nothing to cook on. He has a basket of something, but I don't know what he's planning to cook on, but
maybe they're gonna go wild and he's just gonna start a fire.
I have no idea. It was amazing. I was just also amazed the fact they managed to fit so many people on such a small seaplane as well. I thought it was just the four of them to be on there, but they managed to fit Benny in the back somewhere. So, but as I said, right, the problem with this one falls in much like the Reef, in that if you put people in this big, wide, open location, there's very little for the audience to look at, and if your characters aren't engaging or they haven't got something engaging to do, it just really becomes tedious, and you're just basically watching a bunch of arseholes bicker with each other for a good hour. And the only thing that's breaking up is the fact that when one of them falls overboard or drops an oar or something like that. So they're creating situations for themselves to be killed off. And that's where it sort of became like kind of frustrating. I mean, obviously when we look at other films that we've covered previously, we just look at the less traditional ones. Like Bait had that great setup in the flooded supermarket, that was fun. The 47 meters down ones both had the interesting thing, because obviously 47 meters down the original one, you're in the cage at the bottom of the ocean. It's like, how do we get out of this situation? And then the second one obviously were the underwater caves, and that was fun as well. But this one and the Reef, it's just, I said, it's just open water expanse, and it's like, yeah, it's great for like giving us this sense of isolation, but in terms of giving the cast and the audience something else to engage with, it's just the worst location you can possibly be.
But I don't have as much beef with the reef, mostly because I think that the reef does a better execution. I know you disagree with me. We've already, if you guys want to talk about it, listen to our discussion of the reef and, where we agree and disagree, you can go back and listen to our episode. But for me, the reef works because for me, I felt there was a lot more tension that was able to build. Yeah, sure. The second time I watched it, I felt the drag a little bit more. I think by the time we watched it, I think it was like the third or fourth time I had seen it when we were discussing it. So it was starting to, run down on its surprise element a little bit more. But I still think it creates that anticipation well enough for me to enjoy it. And, obviously that's a personal thing for me. Great White, on the other hand, doesn't use that open space well enough. I think that normally it's really hard because the reef is about these people just swimming in the open ocean. They have they only have their legs and their arms, these little floaty things, right? But this one, it's really weird because I think that they have that little thing, right? They have that little lifeboat that they're on. And a lot of times when you have this vessel of something that you can be on, it kind of adds that element of, if you had intriguing characters and you had, CGI effects or better effects in general, or just, a pacing that worked a little bit better, their narrative being more tight, then this could have actually been potentially a better movie. Because if you think about you can either choose a vast space or a very small space. And it was like when I recently watched Fall, and Fall had this thing which reminded me of 47 Meters Down. Because it was like, instead of being underwater in a cage, you were up in a radio tower, million to thousands of meters up in the air, right? So you're talking about you're just on this little platform. Well, what can you do with a little platform? And that limits you as well as to what you can do. Maybe one day we'll discuss this, but yeah, the main point is what I'm trying to make is that sometimes when you have a smaller, less is more, I guess, in this location. In this situation, I think that they had that less thing. And if they used it a little bit better with their, raft being the central thing and these people not being just bickering about random stuff and having other things happening, well, it might have been a little bit better. There's so many issues with Great White. If they had set it around Hell's Reef and the sunken ship, I think there would have been a little bit more of an adventure there than just being tracked down by whatever, it'd be more of the vibe of The Shallows and not the vibe of trying to make for something like The Reef or I haven't seen Open Waters, but I know that in the Shudder comments a lot of people compared it to Open Waters being a better concept and stuff. I haven't seen it yet, so
yeah, I think Open Waters, the one that's shot on the GoPro cameras, if I remember right. It was a lot of fuss when that one came out, and
yeah,
it's really funny when you watch the trailer for this film. It sells it as a completely different movie. It just shows all the shots of the island. It doesn't show them. There's no shots of them just floating around on a bloody raft, which may have also added to my disappointment to this movie. And now when I'm obviously thinking of the use of location, and I think of other movies as well, it just, even when you look at Jaws 1 and Jaws 2, they both have their finale set in the big expanse of the ocean, but we have the interactions. We have the shark taunting them with the attack and then sort of disrupting things. So we've got things constantly happening, and as I said, the interactions between those group, whether they're arguing teenagers, as in the case of Jaws 2, or it's just the clash between the social clash that we have in Jaws, also memorably. But Jaws, I think, is a bit of an unfair advantage. Obviously, it's directed by Maestro of Cinema, it's Spielberg. It's sort of and he's got that incredible cast, incredible trio there, just playing off each other so well. And we have scenes such as the Indianapolis speech that Quinn gives, and it's just these little things that just keep the tension up. And we know the shark's constantly there because we have these scenes of them trying to catch the shark. We see the shark in the distance, and this time the shark's always there, but it's just it's kind of you're playing a game of Flora's Lava. It's just you're waiting for someone to fall in the water for the shark to appear. And there's a scene where the shark appears like a submarine. It just rises up. And again, sharks don't do that. They can't swim backwards either. So we're on the impossible thing. But
obviously, you said like comparing to Jaws is very unfair. I mean, we can't compare, you know, from the budget element, from the directorial experience, from, you know, just the coincidence of events that happened for Jaws that made it work really well.
Yeah.
A lot of things like that made Jaws be what it is right now, you know, even till today, a classic in the Jaws and the shark creature feature element and that sort of thing. But, you know, you look at the Great White and you know, you can't compare it to things like that. And I think that, you know, there are some, you know, like we're looking at this right now, and I do wonder, maybe if we hunt down a copy of Open Waters, that could be a good one to look at afterwards. Or because, you know, we were talking about this and I was like, you know what, when we talk about like location and that sort of thing, and I'm thinking about the reef stalked actually being a step up from the previous movie that it was, like, it's still silly. It's still very silly, but I think there was something a lot more fun because you're still in the ocean, but I think there was like a whole other element to it with the island and that sort of thing, and it felt a little bit more like a mix of various shark movies that we liked.
Yeah.
Compared to, you know, just the ocean, you know, just the open waters.
You know what I'd really like in these movies, just like once to see, and that'd be them to like just mix in one or two just practical shot effects.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to build a whole shark. Just build the front of the shark. Mm-hmm. It's just there's something so distracting whenever I see like we see a new shark movie and then you see like the fake ass CGI that they've just like phoned it in with.
You know, I would even be okay with. I think when we watched The Reef, it wasn't CGI. We had like actual, because they used.
They used nature footage, didn't they?
Yeah, they used nature footage, and I would be okay with that. You know, like nature footage looks real. If you take the right shot and you add it in, it actually would add to your movie than some type of CGI thing that, you know, like low budget CGI where you really feel like it pulls you out of the experience.
Yeah, I would say though, if you're using nature footage, keep track of the species of shark you're using. Never forget that episode of Baywatch where they have 3 different species of shark because nobody checked the shark footage. So it would like have this leap out footage of a great white, and then it would like cut to like a mako or something. It's like that's a completely different shark we got there. So yeah, the other shot that they rip off is right at the end, which is the shot of the girls on the beach as they're looking out to the ocean, and I think it just perfectly steals the look of the audience having just sat through this movie. I really cannot recommend this one. I mean, it is available on Shudder if you're outside of the UK, so you know you can watch it that way, I guess. But I would not pay money. Yeah. I could say don't pay money for this. If it turns up on one of your streaming services, I mean, over here we have it on the Sky Movies, so on the movie channel, so you can watch it that way if you've got the movie package. But yeah, do not put money on this. Go spend money on something else, like, you know, watch Bullet Train or Nope. No good. This isn't. Go rewatch Jaws 2 or Jaws 1. Or just one of the 47 Meters Down movies, you know. Go back to our archive and find the good movies on this list, so.
You know, honestly, I think that this is probably one of the lowest ranking ones that we've reviewed so far. And, like, hands down, like, I know you don't like The Reef, but I think even The Reef is a little bit higher than this one.
I think I would agree with you, actually. Neither film I want to watch. It's sort of like it neither seems it's like a film experience I want to go back and revisit, but yeah, I would agree with you that The Reef is a little bit better than this film. So, but yeah, I mean, as you said already, you can go back and listen to our episode on The Reef to hear our thoughts on that one. But Kim, have you got anything else you want to talk about in this one?
No, I'm done.
Okay. So that was our review of Great White. If you want to obviously check out our other Shark Week episodes, you can just go to our archive, which you can find at moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com. or you can just scroll through the feed and you will find them there. We do one at the end of every season, so if you're looking for a way to find them, just go to the end of every season and you will find a shark movie there, as well as our After Hours episodes. But if you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to listen to us. Leave us a review, as it all helps raise the profile of the show. And you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Come say hi to us there. Kim, what should we look at next time?
Next one is going to be my pick for After Hours, and it is going to be because we just did an animated season, I stuck with the theme and decided to choose a Chinese animated film called White Snake.
Very exciting. So that's obviously coming up in our next episode, but until then, thank you for listening. Thanks to my co-host Kim, and we'll be back next time to talk about White Snake. But until then, good night.